Welcome back to the Triplecast today as we continue our trilogy on Ridley Scott movies. There's so many to choose from. We've narrowed it down to our favorite three, maybe, but today we're going to be talking about Gladiator, one of his greatest movies, I think. I had never seen it before. I'm excited to be talking about it today. Stick with us. All right, welcome back to Triplecast. Hope everybody's doing great. I'm Daryl.
I'm Clint. Glad to be here. This is it's always good to talk about movies that you really enjoy. And, you know, we did a couple of time travel movies last summer with our Cutting the Cable podcast that, you know, were just okay.
Yeah.
These are like the cream of the crop movies, so it's a great opportunity to be talking about these.
And it's fun, too, because in most cases so far, and this will be the case a lot of times, because if you don't listen to the Fringe podcast, you may not know this, but I don't watch a whole lot of movies. Now, that's becoming more and more, or less and less the case, I guess you could say. I'm watching more than ever before. But Clint is like a movie buff.
Nerd.
And so we're kind of coming at this where I'm discovering these movies for the first time. And in this case, Gladiator, we just did Blade Runner, which I had seen before, and then we're doing Alien. I've heard about these movies, and I've heard good things about these movies, but for whatever reason, I've never taken the time to actually watch them for myself. So both with this one today, Gladiator, and the next one in this series, Alien, this was the first time I had seen either one of these before. And you have seen these before, at least once before. And so we're able to come at it from different angles where you're kind of remembering the things you liked about it, and I'm discovering it for the first time.
Right, absolutely.
Yeah. So as we mentioned, this is our Ridley Scott trilogy. There's so many Ridley Scott movies that we could do. I hesitate to say this is our favorite three. We chose these because we think they're really strong representations of the work that this man has done throughout the years.
Right.
But I would imagine at some point, if this podcast keeps going on, we'll do another Ridley Scott trilogy because he has so many that are worthy of covering it as part of this podcast.
Absolutely.
So as we've mentioned, we're doing Gladiator today. This one was written by David Franzoni, John Logan, and William Nicholson. And of course, directed by Ridley Scott.
That's right. It starred Russell Crowe as General Maximus Decimus Martius, Joaquin Phoenix as Commodus, Daryl as Podcastius Maximus,
yes,
Connie Nelson as Lucilla, Oliver Reed as the, what'd you call him, the Gladiator owner?
Yeah, the slave trader,
Proximo.
Yep.
And of course, a fantastic performance by Richard Harris as Emperor Marcus Aurelius.
I appreciate you working my name into the credits. That's going to be our objective from now on, is to work my name into the credits somehow. I had this illustrious Hollywood career that nobody knows about.
That's right.
But we are revealing it one movie at a time. I haven't actually seen the movie, but somehow I helped in the production of the movie.
That's right. You were about, 14 at the time that this came out?
This came out in what year?
2000.
Oh, thank you. You're kind.
You're welcome.
Yeah. I was born in 76, so I was like 24 when this movie came out.
That's right.
Yep.
Music was done by Lisa Gerard and the very talented Hans Zimmer, who's done some of my favorite soundtracks of all time.
Hans Zimmer he's in my top 2 or 3 movie soundtrack scorers of all composers of all time. Love his work.
Yeah, Glory, Inception, 2 of my favorite soundtracks of all time. Yep.
Yeah. And I'll be honest with you, I wasn't real familiar with like identifying his work with this piece or his work with this movie until I on Pandora I have a John Williams channel, and so it'll scroll through these. You know how Pandora works, and I'll be like, oh man, is this a John Williams or is this someone else? And I found myself over and over again when I would take the time to look at a piece to see who did it because I liked it so much. It was almost always Hans Zimmer. Right. I mean, because I can figure out Danny Elfman stuff. His is pretty recognizable.
Yeah, lots of horns and cymbals.
Yeah, and Michael Giacchino's stuff, I know a lot of his stuff because I'm a big fan of his. Same with John Williams.
Right.
So over and over again, I have found myself loving the work of Hans Zimmer. And now Lisa Gerard, she did most of the music for this. It was kind of weird how the credit for it worked. I don't think that she was eligible for the awards, if I read that right. But anyway, she's probably more
responsible for the...
Yeah, thank you. That's a good way of putting it. Yeah. All right.
The budget for this movie, this was something we always talk about, and just talk about how successful it was. The budget for this movie was $103.
I think that's supposed to be million.
Oh, $103 million.
I think I left the million off of that. Small difference.
And the world box office was $457 million.
Yeah.
It did okay.
Not a bad ROI.
No.
Yeah.
No, definitely not.
Yeah.
460% return on investment, approximately.
Yeah.
This movie was not on Netflix. It is available to rent from either Amazon.
That's a new one. Yeah.
Amazon or iTunes.
Mm-hmm.
I watched it on Vudu.
I think I got it on Amazon this time.
Okay. I just like to spread my movie rental love around.
Mm-hmm.
And since I got that great RCA streaming box,
I've
got access to Vudu movies, which are cheaper and last longer.
Yeah, and that's we did a Cutting the Cable podcast on that. So if you're more interested in that Vudu streaming box, I will put the link to that in the show notes for this. This is Triplecast number 11. So go over to thefringepodcast.com. I'm sorry, there's a habit. Go over to goldenspiralmedia.com. You'll find Triplecast number 11, Gladiator. And then in that, I'll have a link over to our review of the RCA box that you were just talking about. It's a really cool piece of technology.
All right, the plot for this movie, again, comes straight from IMDb. And I'll go ahead and read it. Maximus is a powerful Roman general, loved by the people and the aging Emperor Marcus Aurelius. Before his death, the Emperor chooses Maximus to be his heir over his own son Commodus, and a power struggle leaves Maximus and his family condemned to death. The powerful general is unable to save his family, and his loss of will allows him to get captured and put in the Gladiator games until he dies. The only desire that fuels him now is a chance to rise up to the top so that he'll be able to look into the eyes of the man who will feel his revenge. So that is the plot for the movie Gladiator. And, Daryl, it was really interesting. I think what I guess we're going to get into this a little bit later, but, Ridley Scott basically broke this movie kind of into 3 segments. There was the initial segment where we got to see the General Maximus. Mm-hmm. And then if you remember the Steadicam shot with him, and this is getting into the kind of style and acting, but if you remember the Steadicam shot where he's on the cart, the slaver's cart, you can see the rocks kind of flowing.
Yeah.
And then there was another one when he actually dies, and so it was it was his kind of his first death from being this loved general into a slave,
mm-hmm.
and his second death from, which was an actual physical death, winning out over, a slave becoming more powerful than the Caesar of Rome, an actual death where he gets to move on to be with his family. I love that. I love the way that they did that.
That's a great point. I didn't actually pick up on how those two tied together like that. I noticed that those 2 shots were unique in the film, mm-hmm. but I didn't catch the symbolism of the first one. I'm glad you pointed that out. That was a really cool shot.
I loved it.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that was one of the things I really liked about the movie. But I guess before we get into the style directing, let's talk a little bit about the plot. Daryl,
okay.
you had a lot of good comments here.
Yeah, like I said, this is the first time I had seen this movie, and I know it's a shame because it's a multiple Academy Award-winning film, including Best Picture and all that stuff, but I had never seen it before for whatever reason. But I really liked the perspective that Maximus had. He always seemed to have everything in a proper perspective. It would have been really easy to make him this really brutish, conquer at all costs type of general. Meet your success by just destroying your enemy at all costs. But that would have made him really one-dimensional. It would have been easy to just make him a family man, but that really wouldn't have helped give a full perspective of who he was either. I thought they did a really good job of really rounding out Maximus to be really human, and he kept perspective on this. And one of the earliest examples of this is when they're fighting the Germans. Mm-hmm. Not Germans yet, but you know what I mean.
Yeah, Germanians.
Yeah, and they want them to surrender. They don't. They send their guy back decapitated, and he says to his, whatever his first in command is, he says, would you feel any other way if you were them? Would you lie down if you were in their position? And it just helped capture that this is a guy who is a man of war. He doesn't necessarily enjoy his role as a man of war, but he's really good at it. And he kind of keeps the human perspective throughout the entire film. And so for me, like I said, it would have been really easy to just make him this really strong brute who finds success through being able to conquer everyone physically. But he was much more well-rounded than that.
That's right. And Daryl, you mentioned that he, which I completely agree with. He said he focused on service Marcus Aurelius even after he died. He really, even from the position of being a slave and a gladiator, he tried to do what he thought Marcus Aurelius would have wanted.
Yeah, that's exactly right. And so he was never really about himself. He was always, he was very loyal. Talk about character. We don't really talk about character in today's society as much as we used to. But you talk about honor and, glory, not in the sense of bringing self-glory, but glory to a greater cause.
Right.
That makes sense. That's what this guy was all about. And he was focused on serving Marcus Aurelius even after Marcus was dead.
Right.
And was loyal to the country that he believed in.
Well, just the ideal of Rome.
Yes.
As an ideal that men could be free, that men could have freedom and democracy, all the things that we really associate with what it meant to be Roman back in the day.
Yeah.
So
the whole idea of victory and honor and virtue,
strength and honor. Yep.
Yeah. Of course, strength and honor. Yeah. Versus you have him, this Maximus character, completely played off of the Commodus character, which I thought the casting was perfect. I thought Joaquin and Russell Crowe played off of each other so well.
Oh man, it was
but
great.
Even the character, not the character, not the name Maximus. What I mean is the embodiment of those characters, what they represented, played off of each other so well.
That's right.
And in that case, you have really victory and honor. What'd you say?
Strength and honor.
Strength and honor,
yeah.
which is what they say in the movie. And virtue over corruption, deceit, selfishness, pride. That's what you have in this battle that's going on throughout the whole movie, really.
Oh, man. And I thought, I'm not sure if he won an Academy Award, but Joaquin Phoenix did just a fantastic job playing this Commodus character.
Yeah.
Just with such conviction and, being hurt that he was never good enough for his father and what that led him to do. Both, ended up killing his father,
right,
as well as taking power to kind of prove everyone wrong, as he did, or tried to anyway.
It was an interesting character. Again, talking about characters that are not shallow, that are well rounded. I mean, you look at Commodus, and he wanted the power, he wanted the throne, he wanted people to bow down to him, he wanted to be exalted. But he wanted all those things for the wrong reason. Those are all the things that come with being the emperor of Rome.
Right.
And they would have been his, for his, just given to him, except that he wanted them for the wrong reason. And so that core heart of what makes him, what motivates him, what makes him do or want those things is really what made him not fit for the throne.
Right.
And so it kind of put him it kind of pushed him more into that dark area. I guess, is what I'm trying to say.
And he felt like he had to punish Maximus because he could never be Maximus.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Really well done. When I first saw this movie, Braveheart had come out probably 5-6 years before that. I'm trying to remember when Braveheart actually came out.
I haven't seen that.
But the first time I watched this movie, you haven't seen Braveheart?
No.
Daryl, you're killing me.
I know.
I thought this movie to be really disingenuous. I thought.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I did. I thought, okay, Braveheart did well. It won a bunch of awards. Ridley Scott or whoever was responsible for putting this movie together. I know Ridley Scott just directed it. Took this and said, all right, how do we franchise? We can't make Braveheart 2. How do we make Braveheart in a good way to try and win some awards and make a lot of money? Because Braveheart was one of the few movies that was, successful, financially, just over the top, but also was hailed as a really excellent film. And And so my thought was that they just took this kind of the story of Braveheart, found something similar in ancient Rome, and just changed the setting. And having seen Braveheart several times and then rewatching this movie, I thought that this movie stood on its own. It's a completely different story, although the characteristics of the Braveheart character and Marcus Aurelius were similar in the fact that they had their families destroyed and end up trying to fight for the people to bring freedom against oppression. That kind of thread was the same through both stories. These are really two separate movies, and I thought that this one was really good.
Yeah, yeah. One of the things that happened with the movie as the story was being worked was this idea of how was Maximus going to be portrayed. And they did want him to have more of a softer side. Softer's kind of a strange way of putting it, but they didn't want him to just be this hardened war mastermind character, just full of a bloody man, I guess you could say.
Right.
And so one of the things they did was they added in these portions of the film where he's walking through these wheat fields.
Right.
And those were such a good touch to the movie. It's hard for me to imagine the movie without those, because what they did to the movie was make you care from the very beginning. That's how the movie opens, is with Maximus walking through this wheat field.
It's just brushing his hand over the wheat.
Yeah. And you don't really understand the purpose of it then, but I think that's the point. It's telling these through these flashbacks or flash forwards or flash sidewayses or whatever they are. You don't really know at the time. It's kind of helping bring that context of the movie together as the movie progresses. And so again, at the end of the movie, when he's meeting his family and walking through those, brushing his hands across the heads of wheat, so powerful.
Yeah, that he's
impactful.
He's a real human, and that he's going to his happy place.
Yeah, well, that's true. And he said not many times, but he said at the very beginning, what we do in life echoes through eternity.
Yeah.
And so he had believed that, and he had done what he believed was right, and now here's his reward, his eternal reward for that.
I agree.
Yeah. All right, let's talk about this style of directing. You kind of tipped some of this earlier. Once you continue on that.
Yeah, I thought the movie was fantastic. I think you just mentioned the wheat scene. That's a great scene. I love the steady cam shot.
Mm-hmm. I just busted my knee on
saw that.
on the desk. Yeah.
One of the things that I was trying to think back before this movie came out.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe I don't remember when The Hobbit came out. Not The Hobbit.
You mean Lord of the Rings?
Yeah, the first Lord of the Rings movie. 99 maybe.
Is that right? I was thinking it was after this, but maybe not.
Yeah, so I think this movie did a fantastic job in the coloring.
Uh-huh.
In the department of coloring. There were so many scenes that you had the kind of grayed out grittiness of the battlefield, and then kind of the sandy washed out of the Gladiator, and then in several scenes there was the stark contrast of some solid color. With the tigers, for instance. The tiger set against the kind of bloody backdrop, and the costumes and things like that. They did a fantastic job use of coloring, and it really made the things that you needed to pay attention to really pop off the screen. I thought they did a really good job with that.
Yeah. One of the things that I try to keep an eye out for, in our Alien podcast, which we're going to be recording after this, I have a very similar comment to this, but if a director can convey the image without using dialogue, then they're doing their job right.
Right.
If you have to use cheap dialogue to convey your point, then something's missing. And they did so much. There was some dialogue, but when Commodus first comes onto the battle scene, and he's, have I missed the battle? Of course you've missed the battle.
Yeah.
He knew that he missed the battle.
Yeah, he waited until it was done.
Yeah, so he could show up and look like a hero.
Yeah.
And just the looks that were given to him from the soldiers, from Maximus, from Marcus Aurelius, he tries to take Marcus Aurelius by the hand and lead him, and he gets back on his horse. He doesn't want to have anything to do with Commodus. The looks that Maximus and Commodus shared back and forth, just in those few seconds on screen right there, told us all that we needed to know. Now, there was more dialogue that was layered on later to kind of flesh it out more, But you knew immediately after watching that scene the dynamic between those three characters and how Marcus Aurelius looked at Maximus versus Commodus and how Commodus looked at Maximus. Yeah. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It was so well done.
Yeah. Another thing kind of tying into that same point is, Maximus's little, I don't know what you'd call it, ritual of before he fights a battle, reaching down and touching the dirt, taking a sniff and really understanding where he's at and experiencing the fullness of that. I thought that was a really nice touch. You really get a sense of who he is and why it's important to kind of live in the moment. I mean, where he's sampling, really trying to experience everything he can out of life, and coming from a person who is traditionally a farmer, that soil is everything, right? Soil, if it's good soil, like it was in the battle, you can really grow things. Things are fertile. And if it's bad soil, like it was in the arenas, where he was, there's not a lot of room for growth. And so I thought it was a really nice use of symbolism by the different types of soil. And it really helped carry his character through the entire story.
Yeah, it sure did.
And that last scene where I don't even remember the character's name. It's Jimon Hansu's character.
Yeah, that buried him.
Yeah,
where he figurines
in the soil.
Mm-hmm.
It was kind of like the opposite of what he was doing, right? Where instead of picking it up, he dug it out and put them in the soil so that they could be together.
A little sidebar here. Originally, Proximo was supposed to be the one to bury the figurines in the dirt right there.
Oh, I didn't know that.
But that wasn't able to happen.
No.
We'll talk about that and before we get out of here. But that was a very nice touch.
Right.
Very nice touch. Another thing that I liked was the opening battle scene, and I don't know. There's so much that could be said about that. Mm-hmm. I thought that I had seen parts of Gladiator before. I think that's the only part that I had seen before. And had I known that was the beginning of the movie, I probably would have stayed and watched it. But I probably thought that was the middle of the movie or something. But what a fantastic way to open it! You mentioned the coloring and some of the things like that. Just the grittiness, the dirtiness of it, the fire bombing and all the other things that were going on. It really got you into the moment, into the intensity of the battle. It was such a great opening scene. That whole thing,
right,
from start to finish of the battle, was so good. I don't know what to say about it. That sounds more intelligent than it was really good.
Yeah, it was. It was very good.
Yeah.
I think the movie was a little long for my taste, and I think Ridley Scott kind of excels at making long movies.
Yeah.
But thinking back through the story and really understanding the character, I don't know what I could have taken out.
Yeah, it's interesting you say that. It was long. I had to watch it in 2 sittings
as did I.
When I started it, and I was trying to watch the Thunder game that night. They're in the playoffs right now, and so I stopped the movie when. Let me look up her name. Lucilla. The senator had been arrested, and Lucilla and Maximus are talking, and he's going to go off and get his army. And he finds out his army is still loyal to him. Of course, that doesn't happen, but I didn't know it at the time. So I thought, okay, the senator's been arrested. This will be a good spot to stop the movie. And I went to bed. And then I was getting ready for work the next morning. I was still thinking about the movie, and I had this thought. I'm going, all right, this movie is about 30 minutes longer than your average movie. What is it that they could cut out of the movie? What is it that's irrelevant that I have seen so far?
Mm-hmm.
And the only thing, I kind of started going through the movie, scene at a time, and the only thing that I could come up with was the fighting scene that we saw Commodus doing the next morning after the battle. Commodus is now, the original battle scene. Commodus is still there.
Right.
And in the morning hours, he's off in this little section of the woods with his handlers doing some mock fighting.
Right.
And I thought, well, I don't know. We already know that he's a coward and he's showing up late for the battle. That doesn't really serve any purpose. Well, it did serve some purpose when you get to that final leg of the movie. I picked a great place to stop. If you were to
segment the
movie into acts, I think I picked right at the end of Act 2, right at the beginning of Act 3. And even that one spot that I came up with, it turned out to be a really important part of the movie. It gave us some foreknowledge. He does have some hand-to-hand combat skills. Even though he's not a man of war and doesn't like to fight, he does have some skills. Now, he's no match for Maximus, but we saw throughout the Gladiator battles that nobody is a match for Maximus.
Right.
So, so having said all of that, it was a long movie, but I don't know what I would take out either.
Yeah, you know, and I think Ridley Scott does really well with the long shots, and there were several. You know, the whole movie itself is character driven, and there were a couple of really long shots. You know, kind of the creepy relationship between Lucilla and Commodus, and you know how that gets really creepy by the end of the movie.
Oh man. But I was so glad they didn't show too much. There was the one part where he touched her saliva to his lips and stuff, and I was like, where is this going to go? I know that they're not really brother and sister, but that's what they were portraying. Yeah, it was kind of creepy, but you know, it was intentional. It was actually. We'll talk about the historical accuracy of the film in just a minute, and you know, it's not off base.
Yep. Let's see, and of course the acting and casting were absolutely superb.
Perfect, I thought.
You know, Richard Harris did a great job playing Marcus Aurelius. You know, this great historical figure. Russell Crowe, of course, did a fantastic job, Maximus, and I really like Jimon Hansu's character. I thought he did a great job.
I did too.
Yeah.
Yep.
And they had great chemistry together.
Yeah. So,
all right, let's talk about the historical accuracy of the film.
Yeah. Let me just say that I'm not a historian. Clint is not a historian. So all of this stuff is stuff that I read 2 or 3 articles on the film, or rather, I read 2 or 3 articles on the historical accuracy of the film beyond what I would normally do in research for a podcast. So this is all stuff that I pulled from various other places. So, so not necessarily accurate to specific events. So it's not necessarily there was a guy named Maximus who did this, and this.
Right.
But as far as culture, the style, and the depiction of Rome and the gladiators, pretty accurate. Marcus Aurelius really was an emperor of Rome from 161 to 180. The film starts in 180, which makes sense. He died at the beginning of the film. And you look at Commodus, the character of Commodus, there was an actual person named Commodus. He was really the son of Marcus Aurelius. And he did supposedly have sex with his sisters, but not Lucilla.
Huh, okay.
That's a little gross. Lucilla actually was exiled to Capri, and she was executed for trying to assassinate Commodus in the year 182. So Lucilla did exist. She did want to have her brother killed, but he found out about it. He exiled her and had her executed. His reign was really for 12 years rather than what seemed like a few months maybe in the movie.
Yeah, a couple years.
Yeah, he did actually die. He was actually killed, murdered, or assassinated, I guess you would say. But he was ruled for 12 years. He was assassinated, but not in the Colosseum. He was assassinated in the bath, basically. A guy named Narcissus killed him, and I don't know how he... Sorry. Sorry. I don't know how he killed him. I didn't find out anything on that. But it wasn't as a Roman gladiator. But Narcissus was like a wrestler or something like that.
Yeah, he was I want to say he was a Olympian.
Okay.
But I think I may be mixing my Greek and Roman. Let me look it up.
Okay. While you're doing that, Commodus, like I said, was real. He was very cold. He was very odd. We talked about him actually sleeping with some of his sisters. It's not clear on whether or not he killed his father. Some believe that he did kill his father, which would be Marcus Aurelius. Others will say, and history will say, that Marcus Aurelius died, I think, of the plague. I don't know which one, but some do believe that, you know, just like in the movie, it was made to believe, the people were made to believe that Marcus Aurelius, you know, died in his sleep, but really he was suffocated in the movie by Commodus. So it could be one of those types of things.
Right.
And the Maximus character is not real. He's a fictional character, but he's pulled from these various other actual people from in history. So we mentioned Narcissus, Diocletian, Cincinnatus, Spartacus, to name a few. If you could look at each of their lives and pull in different elements of each of them to construct the figure of Maximus that we see in this the film.
Right. Absolutely. Yeah, he was a wrestler. He was an athlete.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, all right. Other thoughts on the film?
No, I don't have any.
Okay, I've got a few here. I mentioned earlier that Proximo was supposed to bury the figurines at the end of the movie. The reason that that did not happen is because, sadly, Oliver Reed died of a heart attack while they were still filming. They could have brought in another actor, totally reshot everything. It would have cost, I think I saw somewhere, $35 million to do all of that.
Oh, wow.
So what they did was they had a body double. They CG'd his face onto a few places.
Oh, really? I didn't even notice.
And I didn't either.
Yeah.
And in this case, they just rewrote it so that another character buried the figurines. So they reworked it. It did still cost them a couple extra $1 million to do all that, the CG and stuff like that. But sadly, yeah, Oliver Reed died of a heart attack while still filming this film. My other thought is I really wish I had seen this film sooner. I loved the film. I really, really liked it. I told Carrie about it. You know, Carrie doesn't like some films that I do. Like, she doesn't deal with language. Language doesn't bother me some. It bothers her a whole lot. Yeah. But I told her, I said, you know, there's not really a lot of language in this. It's bloody.
It's violent.
It's violent.
Yeah.
That's where it kind of gets its rating from. So she and I might watch it at some point, but I really wish I had seen this sooner. And then I mentioned at the beginning of the podcast that this was an Academy Award winning film, and I still hadn't seen it, but it was nominated for 12, and it won 5. It won Best Picture. Russell Crowe won Best Actor. It won Best Visual Effects, Best Costume Design, and Best Sound. It lost Best Director to Steven Soderbergh.
Soderbergh, yeah.
Which was Traffic that year. Best Supporting Actor with Joaquin Phoenix. He lost to Benicio del Toro for Traffic.
Which Benicio del Toro, not to take anything away from his Traffic performance, was good, but it was not.
Oh, is that right?
It was not this performance.
I haven't seen Traffic.
Yeah.
It was also up for Best Original Screenplay, and it lost to Almost Famous.
Okay.
I haven't seen that either. Best Original Score, which lost to Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon.
Crazy.
You're shaking your head again. You disagree with that one. Best Art Direction, it lost to Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon. I could see that.
Yeah.
Best Cinematography, lost to Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon. Again, I could see that.
Yeah, it was a beautiful movie.
Yeah. And Best Film Editing, lost to Traffic. So if it hadn't been for Traffic and Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon, it would have won more than just 5.
But 5, I mean, that's good.
5 is great. There's no shame.
And it won the biggies.
Yeah,
right?
It sure did. Yeah. So my rating overall, 9. I loved it. 9 Doors to the Afterlife.
And I gave it 8 Strength and Honors.
Nice. Yeah. I like that. All right. What happened next with Russell Crowe?
Well, Russell Crowe, after winning an Academy Award, he got a lot of high-profile roles, including A Beautiful Mind, the boxing movie Cinderella Man, American Gangster, Body of Lies, and teamed up again with Ridley Scott in the movie Robin Hood.
Yeah, and that's just to name a few.
That's just a few. I mean, he's been in The Next 3 Days.
Mm-hmm.
No, Body of Lies was the one he was in, right? Yeah,
yes.
With Leonardo.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. He's been in a bunch of other stuff too.
Yeah. Joaquin Phoenix went on to another movie that I like. Clint's kind of iffy on it. Signs.
Yeah.
Of course, Walk the Line. Is going to be one of his more iconic roles as we look back on his life. And I put on here the David Letterman show,
right? Because
that bit that he did on the David Letterman show will also be another one of those things we look back at him and go, "What?
That was awesome."
So all of that's on YouTube, and it was a spoof that he was doing, and no one knew it at the time. I'm Still Here and We Own the Night, which I'm not familiar with either of those last two.
I'm Still Here was the documentary about how he quit acting and started rapping.
Oh, which has to do with the David Letterman show
exactly.
thing. Yes.
And then We Own the Night was a movie, I think, with Mark Wahlberg. It was I think he was a drug dealing club owner brother of a cop.
Sounds great.
Yeah.
All right. What about Connie?
Connie Nelson she's been in several things, although didn't have quite the illustrious career that others did, but starred in a movie with Robin Williams. I don't know why his name escaped me, called 1 Hour Photo, where he was really creepy.
Okay.
A movie, again, with Mark Wahlberg called Brothers, and then Hunted.
Okay.
With Benicio del Toro.
Oh, okay. And Richard Harris, who has now passed away, I think he passed in 2003, if I remember correctly. He was in Harry Potter and the Sorcerer's Stone, Count of Monte Cristo, and Harry Potter and the Chamber of Secrets.
That's right.
And he passed away 3 years after this. He's got a huge career before this, but this is what happened next, and that's why we're only mentioning those.
And of course, Ridley Scott has done a ton of movies. Hannibal, probably his most famous since this was Black Hawk Down. Matchstick Men with Sam Rockwell and Nicolas Cage.
That's right.
Yep. And I can't remember the female lead in that one. American Gangster, Body of Lies, of course. Robin Hood, and coming out soon, Prometheus.
Man, every trailer of Prometheus looks better than the prior one. I am so excited about Prometheus. Cannot wait. All right, what about same vein? You mentioned Braveheart. Yeah.
There are a lot of war movies. One could say that Spartacus, the classic movie Spartacus.
Sure. Or Ben-Hur.
Ben-Hur would be in the same vein as Gladiator. This is kind of just an updated movie of those.
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay. Very good. Well, I guess it is now time for... It's now time for... Name That Movie.
Movie.
Just so you know, I tried to get out of playing that clip this time and tried to do away with it all together.
And I insisted.
Yeah. So, like it or not, if you don't like it, blame Clint. All right. In the last podcast, we looked at 3 movies that were remakes, and I know it was incredibly difficult and probably unfair on multiple levels, and we made it through that. But you'll remember that we one of them we looked at was No Way Out, which starred Sean Young and Kevin Costner, right? And so we were looking at Blade Runner. That's where we started at. So taking Sean Young from Blade Runner and pairing her with Kevin Costner in No Way Out, we're now at Kevin Costner.
Okay. Oh boy.
So we're looking for a name of a film, just one film.
Okay.
This was Kevin Costner has directed multiple films.
He's done a lot,
but this was his directorial debut.
This would have been Dances with Wolves. Is that right?
Oh my goodness! Yes.
Was that it?
That was it.
Oh man! Well, that makes up for last week.
I was really hoping. I knew that was it. I was taking a chance with that, but I was really hoping you wouldn't know it that quickly.
Okay.
Yeah, Dances with Wolves is what I was looking for.
Okay.
My next clue was this film won 7 Academy Awards.
Yeah, which is pretty incredible.
Yeah.
To win that many.
25% of this movie's language is not English, and Kevin also starred and produced this film. So he produced it, he starred in it, he directed it. Won 7 Academy Awards. That'll gain you some street cred.
It did, and what did he do with that street cred?
Waterworld
and The Postman.
Yeah, unfortunately. Yeah. And then this film is Dances with Wolves. Wow, that was not challenging in the least for you.
No, that was good, though. Finally. I mean, last week was so rough.
Yeah.
I just felt hammered. I think, thanks for this soft toss this week.
Well, I didn't intend it to be like lobbing a beach ball at you. Yeah. You know what? Yeah, we've got New Dana in the chat room who's saying that she loved Waterworld. I didn't think Waterworld was as bad as people as it kind of will go down in history for. I think that people had such a high expectation for it, and the budget was through the roof on it, and it didn't make budget. I think that's kind of where its legacy comes from. But as I watch it, I don't dislike watching. I've seen it 2 or 3 times, and I don't dislike watching the movie.
Well, and when you have a actor-director that wins 7 Academy Awards with a relatively original story, and he comes out and gets all this money for this other movie, you don't expect it to be mediocre at best.
This, if I remember right, Waterworld was his next project after Dances with Wolves.
Right, and so
the expectation was through the roof.
Huge, and it was, at the time, it was the highest budget of any movie ever made.
Right.
And
I think Titanic beat that later on.
Oh, yeah. I mean, there are lots of movies that beat it since then.
I remember Titanic having that same onus put upon it, but of course it rose to the occasion.
Yeah.
Or sank to the occasion. Ba-dum-bum. All right. Well, cool. Good job, Clint. Congratulations. All right. Well, that's going to wrap it up for the podcast. If you guys want to send us some feedback, which we do have feedback, I don't have it prepared. I'll have it prepared for our Alien podcast. Okay. I mentioned in our last Fringe podcast that we've gotten feedback on both sides of the fence about our Knight's Tale. We've had some people that say, Clint, come on, it's a good movie. And we've had some people that go, Daryl, come on, it's a terrible movie. We've got some other feedback that we'll get to in our next podcast. But if you want to send us in feedback, that email address is feedback@goldenspiralmedia.com, or call us on the Golden Spiral Media voice feedback line at 304-837-2278.
That's right.
You can also connect with us on Facebook at facebook.com/Golden Spiral Media. And if you're interested in advertising on this podcast or any of the other Golden Spiral Media productions, go over to goldenspiralmedia.com and click on the advertise link. There's a little form for you to fill out. We'll get that, and we'll get back with you.
That's right. All right, Daryl.
Right.
What do you say we get out of here?
All right, man. It's been a pleasure talking about Gladiator with you today. And guys, thanks for joining us for this episode. And until next time, Trianara.
Strength and honor.
Triplecast is a production of Golden Spiral Media. Intro and outro music provided by Kevin MacLeod, Incompetech.com. For more information about this or other Golden Spiral Media podcasts, visit goldenspiralmedia.com. Copyright 2012, Golden Spiral Media.